I didn't know that saving a dog's life would cost me my own, or that 3 alphas would find me dying in the snow and decide I was worth keeping. My name is Rowan Ashby. I'm 24 years old, and I work at Mercy Paws Animal Shelter on the east side of the city. It's not glamorous work. Most days I'm cleaning kennels, mixing food, and trying to convince people that the 3-legged cat with one eye is actually the sweetest creature on earth. But I love it. Animals don't care that I'm quiet. They don't care that I flinch when people raise their voices or that I eat lunch alone in the supply closet because the break room feels too crowded. They just want someone to be gentle with them, and I can do that. The morning the blizzard warning came through, I was in the middle of my shift, sitting on the floor of Kennel 12 with a senior beagle named Copper, who'd been surrendered because his owner moved to a no-pet apartment. He was pressed against my side, his graying muzzle resting on my knee, and I was reading him the weather report from my phone. "Looks like it's going to be a bad one, Copper," I murmured, scratching behind his ears. 8 to 12 inches, wind gusts up to 40 miles per hour. They're saying people should stay off the roads after 3. Copper let out a long, mournful sigh, like he understood exactly how serious this was. My supervisor, Rita, poked her head into the kennel area. "Rowan, we're closing early. Storm's coming in faster than they predicted. You should head home now, before it gets bad." I checked my phone. It was only 1 in the afternoon, but when I looked out the small window, I could already see fat snowflakes starting to fall. They looked gentle now, but I'd lived in this city long enough to know how quickly gentle could turn deadly. "Okay," I said, giving Copper one last pat. "I'll finish the afternoon feeding first." "No, go now," Rita insisted. "I'll handle it. You take the bus, right? You don't want to get stranded." She was right. I couldn't afford a cab, and the bus lines would shut down once the snow got heavy. I grabbed my coat from my locker, a threadbare thing I'd had since high school, and wrapped my grandmother's blanket around my neck like a scarf. It was thick, cream-colored wool, hand-knitted, and the only valuable thing I owned. My grandmother had made it for me before she died, and even though it was too nice to wear to work, I'd brought it today because the morning had been so cold. The snow was already falling harder when I stepped outside. The wind hit me immediately, sharp and biting, cutting through my coat like it wasn't even there. I pulled the blanket tighter and started walking toward the bus stop. But when I got there, the digital display was blank. No buses running. The storm had shut down the lines faster than predicted. I looked around. The streets were emptying quickly, people hurrying to their cars or ducking into shops. I was still 3 miles from my apartment, 3 miles in a blizzard with a coat that barely worked and boots that had a hole in the left sole. I started walking. What else could I do? The wind picked up as I cut through the park, a shortcut I usually avoided because it was isolated. But today I needed to save time. The snow was coming down in sheets now, so thick I could barely see 10 feet ahead. My fingers were already going numb despite being shoved deep in my pockets. That's when I heard it. A sound that didn't belong in the howling wind. A low, pained whine. I stopped walking, my heart immediately kicking up speed. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely carrying over the storm. The whine came again, weaker this time. I followed the sound off the main path, my boots crunching through snow that was already ankle-deep. There, partially hidden behind a park bench and a trash can, was a dog. Not just any dog. A massive Bernese mountain dog, his tri-colored coat matted with snow and something dark that I realized with horror was blood. He was lying on his side, his chest heaving with shallow breaths, his brown eyes barely open. "Oh no," I whispered, dropping to my knees beside him. "Oh no, no, no." There was a gash on his front leg, deep enough that I could see muscle. It looked like he'd been hit by something, maybe a car, maybe caught on something sharp. The snow around him was stained pink. He was wearing a collar, an expensive-looking leather one with a silver tag, but when I reached for it with my numb fingers, I couldn't make out the engraving through the snow. "Hey, buddy," I said softly, laying my hand on his head. "Hey, it's okay. I'm going to help you." The dog's eyes focused on me for just a second. His tail gave the weakest thump against the snow. My mind raced. I needed to get help, needed to call someone. But when I pulled out my phone, my hands were shaking so badly from the cold that I nearly dropped it. And when I tried to dial, there was no signal. The storm was interfering with everything. The shelter was closer than my apartment, but still over a mile away. Could I carry him? He had to weigh at least 90 pounds, probably more. I was small for an Omega, thin, without much muscle. But I looked at him lying there, bleeding into the snow, and I knew I didn't have a choice. I took off my coat first. It wasn't much, but it was something. I wrapped it around his middle, trying to stem the bleeding from his leg. Then I unwound my grandmother's blanket from my neck. For a second, I hesitated. This blanket was all I had left of her. It was warm and thick and irreplaceable. The dog whimpered. I wrapped the blanket around him, tucking it carefully over his body, covering as much of him as I could. There, I said, my teeth already starting to chatter. That'll keep you warm. Now I was in just my work shirt and jeans. The cold hit me like a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs. I slid my arms under the dog's body and lifted. He was heavier than I expected, dead weight, his head lolling against my shoulder. My back screamed in protest, my arms shaking. But I started walking. The shelter. I just had to get to the shelter. Rita would still be there. She'd help. She'd know what to do. Every step was agony. The dog was so heavy, my legs trembled. The snow was getting deeper, making it harder to walk. And the cold was everywhere. My fingers had gone from numb to burning. My face felt like it was being cut with knives. I couldn't feel my feet anymore. I don't know how long I walked. Time stopped meaning anything. There was just the weight in my arms, the snow in my face, and the desperate need to keep moving. The dog's head was tucked against my neck. I could feel his breath, warm against my frozen skin. "Stay with me," I whispered. "Just stay with me." Almost there. I wasn't almost there. I didn't even know where I was anymore. The park looked the same in every direction, just white and wind and cold. My vision started to blur. My legs felt like they were made of lead. I stumbled, nearly fell, caught myself. The dog whimpered again, and I felt something wet on my neck. Not blood, tears. He was crying. "I know," I said, my own voice cracking. "I know it hurts. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." My knees gave out. I went down hard, managing to twist at the last second so the dog landed on top of me instead of hitting the ground. The impact knocked the air from my lungs. I lay there in the snow, the dog's weight pressing me down, and I realized I couldn't get back up. My arms wouldn't work. My legs wouldn't work. Everything was so cold, it burned. I wrapped my arms around the dog, holding him close. At least he had the blanket. At least he'd be warm. My eyes started to drift closed. I thought about my grandmother, about Copper in his kennel, about all the animals at the shelter who were safe and warm while I was freezing in a park. I didn't regret it. Even as the cold pulled me under, I didn't regret trying to save him. The last thing I felt was the dog's nose pressing against my cheek, warm and wet. The last thing I thought was, at least I wasn't alone. Then everything went dark. I woke up to voices, loud, frantic, desperate voices that seemed to be coming from very far away. "Found them! They're here! Gabriel, they're here!" "Is he breathing?" "Sebastian, is he breathing?" "Barely. Jesus Christ, he's ice cold." "Nathaniel, get the blankets from the car. Now." Hands on me, multiple hands, lifting me. The dog's weight disappearing from my chest. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids were frozen shut. Tried to speak, but my jaw wouldn't move. "Stay with us," a voice said, close to my ear. Deep, commanding. "Stay with us. We've got you. We've got both of you." The warmth hit me like a wall. I was inside something, a car, maybe, and there were heated blankets being wrapped around me. The sudden temperature change hurt worse than the cold had. I managed to force my eyes open just a crack. Blurry shapes, 3 of them. Large, dark, moving around me with practiced efficiency. "Atlas," one of them said, his voice breaking. "Thank God. Thank God." Atlas. The dog's name was Atlas. "The Omega," another voice said. "His core temperature is too low. We need to get him to the hospital, now." "Both of them," the first voice commanded. "We're not leaving him. He saved Atlas. We're not leaving him." The car started moving. I felt hands holding mine, rubbing warmth back into my fingers. I felt someone pressing a warm compress against my face. "Stay awake," the third voice said, gentler than the others, but no less urgent. Please stay awake. We're almost there. Just stay with us. I tried. I really tried. But the darkness was pulling at me again, warm this time instead of cold, and I couldn't fight it. I let go. When I woke up again, it was to steady beeping and the smell of disinfectant. Hospital. I was in a hospital. My whole body hurt. Everything felt heavy and distant, like I was wrapped in cotton. I tried to move my hand and immediately regretted it. Sharp, burning pain shot through my fingers. Don't move. The voice came from my right. You have frostbite. It's not severe, but you need to keep still. I turned my head slowly, carefully, and found myself looking at three men. They were identical. Not similar. Identical. Triplets, clearly, with the same sharp features, the same dark hair, the same intense gray eyes. They were all tall, all built like they spent significant time in a gym, all wearing expensive-looking clothes that seemed out of place in the sterile hospital room. But despite looking identical, something about them felt different. The one sitting closest to my bed had his hands clasped tightly together, his knuckles white. The one standing by the window had his arms crossed, his jaw tight. The one leaning against the wall looked like he was fighting to stay calm, his fingers drumming against his thigh. The dog, I croaked. My throat felt like I'd swallowed glass. Is he? Atlas is fine, the one by my bed said immediately. His voice was the commanding one from the car. Thanks to you, you saved his life. Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt tears prick at my eyes. Good. That's good. You nearly died, the one by the window said, his voice tight. Your core body temperature was 86 degrees when we found you. Another 10 minutes, and he stopped, his jaw working. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't know why I was apologizing. For scaring them? For nearly dying? For existing? Don't apologize, the one against the wall said firmly. You have nothing to apologize for. You saved our dog. You gave him your coat and your blanket and nearly froze to death doing it. I looked down at my hands. They were wrapped in soft bandages, and I could see the edges of what looked like blisters on my fingertips. Frostbite. The doctor had said frostbite. I'm Gabriel Sterling, the one by my bed said, drawing my attention back. These are my brothers. Sebastian, he gestured to the one by the window, and Nathaniel. The one against the wall nodded. Sterling. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it through the fog in my head. Rowan, I said. Rowan Ashby. We know, Sebastian said softly. We found your ID. You work at Mercy Paws. I nodded, then winced as the movement made my head spin. The doctor says you'll make a full recovery, Gabriel continued. The frostbite is mild. It'll heal. But you need to rest. You've been through severe trauma. How long have I been here? I asked. 18 hours, Nathaniel said. You were unconscious for most of it. We were. He stopped, exchanged a look with his brothers. We were worried. I didn't understand why these strangers would be worried about me. I'd saved their dog, sure, but that didn't explain the intensity in their eyes or the way they were all watching me like I might disappear. Atlas was injured, I said, changing the subject because their attention made me uncomfortable. His leg. Is he okay? He's recovering at home, Sebastian said, pushing off from the window and moving closer. I'm a veterinarian. I treated him myself. The wound was deep but clean. He'll need rest and antibiotics, but he's going to be fine. Because of you. He was a veterinarian. That made sense. There was something gentle about him despite his size. Something calm. Where did you find us? I asked. I got lost in the storm. I was trying to get to the shelter. The park, Gabriel said. We were searching for Atlas. He'd been missing for 6 hours. We had every available person looking, and when the storm hit, we refused to stop. We were driving through the park when Nathaniel spotted something dark in the snow. You, Nathaniel added, lying in the snow with Atlas on top of you. You'd wrapped him in your blanket and your coat. You were protecting him with your body. The way he said it made it sound heroic. It hadn't felt heroic. It had felt like the only thing I could do. His collar said his name and your phone number, I said, the memory coming back. I tried to call, but my phone had no signal. We know, Sebastian said. We found your phone. It was in your pocket. Dead battery and water damage from the snow. Great. Another thing I couldn't afford to replace. As if reading my mind, Gabriel said, "We're replacing everything you lost. Your coat, your phone, your blanket, everything." "You don't have to do that," I said quickly. "I'm fine, really." "Your blanket was hand-knitted," Nathaniel said quietly. The tag inside said, "Made with love by Grandma Rose." "We can't replace that, but we can try." The fact that they'd noticed that detail, that they'd checked, made something tight form in my chest. "It's okay," I said, my voice small. "She's gone anyway. It's just a blanket." It wasn't just a blanket. It was the last piece of my grandmother I'd had. But saying that out loud would make me cry, and I didn't want to cry in front of these powerful alpha strangers. "How did Atlas get hurt?" I asked, desperate to change the subject again. The three brothers exchanged another look, this one darker. "He was at our mother's sanctuary," Gabriel said carefully. "There was an incident. Someone cut the fence, and several animals got out. Atlas went after them. He's trained to herd and protect. He must have caught his leg on something sharp in the chaos. By the time we realized he was missing, he'd already been gone for hours." "The sanctuary?" I repeated. "Our mother founded an animal sanctuary before she passed," Sebastian explained. "I run it now. It's for abused and neglected animals. Atlas lives there with me. He's not just a pet, he's a therapy dog. He works with traumatized animals to help them learn to trust again." That explained the expensive collar and the obvious training. Atlas wasn't just a pet. He was important, valuable, and I'd nearly died saving him. "He's special to us," Nathaniel said, his voice rough. "He was the last gift our mother gave us before she died. She raised him from a puppy specifically for the sanctuary. Losing him would have—" He stopped, his throat working. "I'm glad I found him," I said quietly. "I'm glad he's okay." Gabriel leaned forward, his intense gray eyes locked on mine. "You nearly died, Rowan. Do you understand that? You gave a stranger's dog your only warm clothing in the middle of a blizzard. You carried him through a storm until you collapsed. That's not just kind, that's—" He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "That's extraordinary." I didn't feel extraordinary. I felt tired and sore and confused about why these three alphas were looking at me like I'd done something impossible. "I work with animals," I said simply. "I couldn't leave him to die." "Most people would have," Sebastian said. "Most people would have called for help and kept walking. But you didn't." A nurse came in then, interrupting the strange, intense moment. She checked my vitals, adjusted my IV, and told me I'd be discharged in the morning if my temperature stayed stable. When she left, Gabriel stood. "We should let you rest, but we'll be back tomorrow to take you home." "I can take the bus," I said quickly. "No, you can't," Nathaniel said firmly. "You nearly died from hypothermia. You're not taking the bus. We're driving you. End of discussion." I wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was pulling at me again. "Okay," I whispered. They left, but not before Gabriel pressed something into my unbandaged palm, a business card. "If you need anything," he said, "anything at all, call." After they were gone, I looked at the card. Sterling Biotech, Gabriel Sterling, CEO. There was a phone number and an email address. I tucked it under my pillow and closed my eyes, too tired to process what any of this meant. The next morning, I was discharged with a list of care instructions for my frostbite and a prescription for antibiotics I couldn't afford to fill. The discharge nurse seemed surprised when I asked about payment, then explained that everything had been covered. "The Sterling brothers took care of it," she said. "They were very insistent." I felt my face heat. They'd paid my medical bills. I didn't even want to know how much that was. Gabriel was waiting in the lobby when I came down, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine in his dark coat and perfectly tailored suit. He smiled when he saw me, a real, warm smile that transformed his serious face. "Ready?" he asked. "You didn't have to come personally," I said. "You could have sent a driver." "I wanted to come," he said simply. He took my bag, a small plastic one the hospital had given me with my ruined clothes inside, and led me to a sleek black car parked at the curb. The drive to my apartment was quiet. I directed him through the streets, acutely aware of how run down my neighborhood looked compared to the obvious wealth he represented. When we pulled up in front of my building, Gabriel's expression tightened slightly, but he didn't comment on the cracked steps or the graffiti on the wall. "Thank you," I said, reaching for the door handle. For everything. The hospital, the ride, all of it. Rowan, Gabriel said, and something in his tone made me pause. We'd like to see you again, all three of us. Would that be okay? I blinked at him. Why? Because Atlas won't stop asking for you, he said, a small smile playing at his lips. And because we'd like to properly thank you for saving his life. I should have said no. Should have recognized that these wealthy alpha triplets lived in a completely different world than me. But the thought of seeing Atlas again, of knowing for sure that he was okay, made me nod before I could think better of it. Okay, I said. When? Tonight? Gabriel suggested. We'll pick you up at 6. Bring an appetite. Sebastian's cooking. I nodded again, feeling like I was agreeing to something much bigger than dinner, and climbed out of the car. As I watched him drive away, I wondered what I'd just gotten myself into. At exactly 6 o'clock, there was a knock at my door. I'd spent the past 2 hours trying to clean my tiny studio apartment and make myself look presentable, which was hard to do when my hands were still bandaged and my fingers ached with every movement. When I opened the door, all three of them were there. Gabriel in his perfectly tailored suit, Sebastian in dark jeans and a soft sweater, Nathaniel in tactical pants and a fitted black shirt. They filled my narrow hallway completely. Ready? Gabriel asked. No. Yes. The drive took us out of the city into the hills where the houses got bigger and the fences got taller. When we finally pulled through a set of iron gates and up a long driveway, I realized house was an understatement. The Sterling estate was a mansion, all stone and glass and perfectly manicured grounds. This is where you live? I asked, my voice embarrassingly small. The sanctuary is on the property, Sebastian explained. We all live here so we can help with the animals. He made it sound normal, like everyone lived in a mansion with a private animal sanctuary attached. They led me inside, and the warmth hit me immediately, not just from the heating system, but from the space itself. Despite the size, it felt lived in. There were books on tables, blankets draped over chairs, and in the middle of the foyer, Atlas! I dropped to my knees as the huge dog bounded toward me, his tail wagging so hard his whole back end wiggled. His front leg was neatly bandaged, but he was moving well, his eyes bright and alert. He nearly knocked me over in his enthusiasm, pressing his enormous head against my chest and making happy whining sounds. Hey, buddy, I breathed, wrapping my arms around him. Hey, you're okay, you're okay. I looked up to find all three brothers watching me with identical expressions of something I couldn't quite name. Warmth, maybe. Satisfaction, something deeper. He's been waiting by the door for 2 hours, Nathaniel said, his voice rough. Somehow, he knew you were coming. Atlas licked my face, then my bandaged hands, gentle and careful like he understood I was hurt too. Dinner's ready, Sebastian said. If you can convince Atlas to let you go. The dining room was smaller than I expected, intimate, with a table that sat 6 instead of 20. The meal Sebastian had prepared was incredible. Roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, homemade bread that was still warm from the oven. You made all this? I asked, staring at the spread. Cooking relaxes me, Sebastian said with a slight smile. And we wanted tonight to be special. We ate, and somehow I found myself relaxing. They asked about my work at the shelter, and I found myself telling them about Copper and the three-legged cat and the parrot who only spoke in swear words. They laughed at my stories, asked questions, actually listened. Gabriel told me about Sterling Biotech, how they developed medical treatments for rare diseases. Nathaniel explained his security firm, how he protected people who couldn't protect themselves. Sebastian talked about the sanctuary, the animals they'd saved, the rehabilitation programs they ran. They were brilliant, accomplished, powerful, and somehow they were sitting here listening to me talk about cleaning kennels like it was the most interesting thing in the world. After dinner, Sebastian suggested we visit the sanctuary. Atlas can show you around, he said, with a knowing smile. The sanctuary was a short walk from the main house, a series of buildings and outdoor enclosures spread across several acres. Even in the dark, I could see how well-maintained everything was. We have about 40 animals right now, Sebastian explained as we walked. Mostly dogs and cats, but also some farm animals, a few exotic rescues that needed specialized care. He showed me the veterinary clinic, state-of-the-art and gleaming, the rehabilitation center where traumatized animals learned to trust again. The adoption center where they matched animals with carefully vetted families. This is amazing, I breathed. This is your saving so many lives. We try, Sebastian said softly, but we always need more help. More volunteers, more expertise. He paused, glancing at his brothers. Actually, we wanted to talk to you about something. We stopped in front of a small building labeled Administration. The shelter where you work, Gabriel said carefully. We know they don't pay well. We know the conditions are difficult. My face heated. They'd looked into my job, into my life. We'd like to offer you a position here, Sebastian continued, as our animal care coordinator. You'd work directly with the animals, oversee the daily care routines, help with rehabilitation programs. The pay would be significantly better than what you're making now. I stared at them. You want to hire me? We want you here, Nathaniel said, his voice intense. We want you working with animals you clearly love, in an environment where you'd be valued. And we want... He stopped, exchanged a look with his brothers. We want to see you every day, Gabriel finished quietly. If you'll let us. My heart was pounding. This was too much, too fast. Why? I asked. You don't know me. You're grateful I saved Atlas. But it's not just gratitude, Sebastian interrupted gently. Rowan, when we found you in that snow, when we saw what you'd done for Atlas, something changed, for all of us. We can't explain it, Gabriel added. Not logically, but we feel it, this pull toward you, this need to protect you, provide for you, keep you close. Nathaniel stepped closer, his eyes searching mine. Have you noticed it? When we're near you, the way your scent changes, the way ours does? I had noticed. Had been trying not to think about the way they all smelled like cedar and winter air, how it made my omega instincts purr with contentment. Had been trying to ignore the way my suppressants seemed less effective around them. I'm on suppressants, I said weakly. You shouldn't be able to scent me. We can, all three said in unison. Atlas whined softly, pressing against my legs like he was trying to ground me. We think Gabriel started, then stopped. We think you might be our fated mate. The words hung in the air between us. Fated mates. The rarest, most powerful bond in Omega Alpha dynamics. The kind of thing that happened in stories, not real life, and certainly not to someone like me. All three of you? I whispered. All three of us, Sebastian confirmed. We've never felt anything like this. Never wanted anyone the way we want you. I should have run. Should have said no, thank you for dinner, and gotten as far away from this impossible situation as possible. Instead, I found myself asking, what happens if you're wrong? Then we're wrong, Nathaniel said, and we'll respect whatever boundaries you set, but Rowan, we don't think we're wrong. I looked at Atlas, who was watching me with those soulful eyes. Looked at the sanctuary spread out around us, a dream job I never thought I'd have. Looked at three identical faces watching me with identical hope. I need time, I said, to think, to process all this. Take all the time you need, Gabriel said immediately. But please, at least consider the job offer. You deserve better than what you have. Let us give you that, even if you decide you don't want anything else from us. I nodded slowly. I'll think about it. They drove me home, and Atlas came with us, refusing to leave my side until Gabriel gently coaxed him back into the car. As I watched them drive away, I realized my entire life had just shifted on its axis, and I had no idea what to do about it. The 3 days between that dinner and my decision were the longest of my life. I went to work at Mercy Paws, but everything felt different now. The cramped kennels felt smaller. The inadequate supplies felt more frustrating. And every time I looked at Copper or the three-legged cat, I thought about the sanctuary, about what I could do with real resources, real support. But more than that, I thought about them, about the way Gabriel's eyes had softened when he talked about his mother, about Sebastian's gentle hands checking Atlas's bandages, about Nathaniel's quiet strength as he'd carried my bag to the car. I thought about fated mates, about the impossibility of it. 3 alphas and 1 omega, all bound together by something bigger than logic or reason. It terrified me. On the second night, Gabriel called, not to pressure me about the job, just to check in. How are your hands? He asked. The frostbite healing okay? It's fine, I said, looking at my bandaged fingers. Hurts a little, but the doctor said that's normal. If it gets worse, call me immediately. Sebastian knows the best specialists. We can get you better treatment. Gabriel, I interrupted gently. It's okay. Really. He was quiet for a moment. I worry about you. We all do. Is that okay? Or is it too much? The vulnerability in his voice made my chest ache. This powerful alpha CEO was asking permission to care about me. It's okay, I whispered. I'm not used to it, but it's okay. Good, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Because we're not going to stop. On the third day, a package arrived at my apartment. Inside was a new winter coat, thick, warm, expensive, and wrapped in tissue paper, a blanket. Not my grandmother's that could never be replaced, but a beautiful cream-colored wool blanket with a card that read, "Because everyone deserves to be warm, G, S, and N." I cried holding that blanket. Cried because these strangers, these alphas I barely knew, had seen my loss and tried to honor it without replacing it, had given me warmth without expecting anything in return. That's when I knew I was going to say yes. Not just to the job, but to whatever this was between us. To the possibility that fate had brought us together for a reason. I called Gabriel that evening. I'll take the job, I said. When do I start? Whenever you're ready, he said, his voice warm with relief. But Rowan, you should know, this isn't just about the job. We want you in our lives. However much of yourself you're willing to give, we want it. Need it, even. I know, I said softly. I want that too. I'm scared. We know. And we'll go at whatever pace you need. But we're not going anywhere. We're in this for the long haul. Those words settled something in my chest, made the fear a little less overwhelming. Okay, I said. Let's try. My last day at Mercy Paws was bittersweet. Rita hugged me and told me she was proud of me. Copper licked my face and seemed to understand I was leaving. I promised to visit, promised to help them find him a good home. The Sterling brothers picked me up on my first day, all three of them insisting on being there. It's a big day, Sebastian said when I protested. We wanted to be part of it. The sanctuary was different in daylight. Beautiful and sprawling, full of animals who needed exactly what I'd always wanted to give, gentle care and patience. They set me up in a small office attached to the main care facility, gave me a tablet with all the animal files, introduced me to the 3 other staff members who worked there, and Atlas shadowed me everywhere, his unofficial job apparently being my personal assistant. He's bonded to you, Sebastian said, watching the dog refuse to leave my side during the afternoon feeding routine. It happens sometimes with animals who've been through trauma together. He sees you as Pack now. Pack. The word made something warm bloom in my chest. Working at the sanctuary was everything I'd dreamed of. The animals were well cared for, the facilities were pristine, and I had actual resources to help them instead of constantly scrambling to make do with too little. And the Sterling brothers were there, not hovering, but present. Gabriel would stop by during his lunch breaks, bringing me coffee exactly how I liked it, even though I'd never told him. Sebastian worked in the veterinary clinic most days, always available if I had questions. Nathaniel would appear at the end of my shifts, insisting on walking me to my car, which they'd also provided, a modest but reliable sedan because you can't take the bus anymore. It's not safe. They were courting me. I realized it after 2 weeks. Every small gesture, every thoughtful gift, every moment they made me feel valued and protected, it was courting behavior. Alpha courtship of their potential omega. And God help me, it was working. I started staying later, finding excuses to be there when they were. Started looking forward to the mornings when Gabriel would show up with breakfast. Started seeking out Sebastian when I needed comfort after a particularly hard case. Started letting Nathaniel teach me self-defense just in case, even though we both knew it was really about the contact, the trust building. Atlas watched all of it with approval, his tail wagging whenever the 4 of us were together. It was perfect and terrifying in equal measure. The night my heat started, I was at home in my apartment. I'd felt it building all day, the restless energy, the sensitivity to scent, the way my body ached for something I couldn't name. I'd called in sick to work, which I never did. I had suppressants, the prescription kind I'd been taking since I presented. They should have prevented this. But as the evening wore on and my skin felt like it was on fire, I realized with growing horror that they weren't working. The heat was coming anyway, breaking through the medication like it was nothing. I was going to have to ride this out alone in my apartment, and the thought terrified me. My first heat had been manageable but painful. This one felt different, stronger, more desperate. My phone buzzed. A text from Sebastian. "You okay? You never call in sick." I stared at the message, my hands shaking. I should lie. Should tell him I was fine, just a stomach bug, nothing to worry about. Instead, I typed, "Heat, coming early, suppressants not working." The response was immediate. "Address, now." I sent it, then dropped the phone because another wave hit me, stronger this time. I curled up on my bed, pressing my face into the pillow, trying to breathe through it. They arrived in 12 minutes. I know because I watched the clock, counting down, needing them with a desperation that should have scared me but didn't. When the knock came, I somehow made it to the door, opened it to find all three of them standing there, their eyes dark and concerned, their scents washing over me like a tidal wave. "Rowan," Gabriel said, his voice rough. "Can we come in?" I nodded, stepping back. They entered, and the small space immediately felt charged, heavy with alpha pheromones responding to my omega heat. "We won't touch you without permission," Sebastian said immediately, his hands raised like he was approaching a frightened animal. "We're just here to help, to make sure you're safe." "It hurts," I admitted, my voice breaking. "Everything hurts." Nathaniel made a sound low in his chest, pained. "Heat is harder when you're near your fated mates. Your body recognizes us. It wants—" "I know what it wants," I interrupted, wrapping my arms around myself. "But I can't. I'm not ready to—" "We know," Gabriel said firmly. "We're not asking for that. But we can help in other ways. Scent marking, presence, contact, if you want it. Whatever you need." I looked at them, three powerful alphas who could take whatever they wanted but were standing in my tiny apartment asking permission for every touch. "Stay," I whispered. "Please stay." They did. They built me a nest on my bed with every soft thing in the apartment, adding their own shirts for scent. They took turns sitting with me, offering cool water and gentle touches when I asked for them. They never pushed, never demanded, just provided comfort and presence. When the worst of the heat hit and I begged for more, Gabriel held my hand and said firmly, "Not like this. When we bond, when we claim you, it'll be because you chose us with a clear head. Not because heat made you desperate." It was the most restraint I'd ever seen from alphas. It was proof that everything they'd said was true. They didn't just want my body, they wanted me, all of me, forever. The heat lasted 3 days, but let me tell you what those 3 days were really like. Let me tell you about the care they showed, the restraint, the way they loved me without taking anything I wasn't ready to give. The first night was the hardest. The heat had come on fast and brutal, my body demanding things my mind wasn't ready for. When they arrived, I was curled up on my bed, shaking and sweating, my skin feeling like it was on fire. "Rowan," Gabriel said softly, kneeling beside the bed. "Can we touch you, just to help regulate your temperature?" I nodded, unable to form words. What followed was the most careful, respectful care I'd ever experienced. They built me a nest, with methodical precision, Sebastian stripping off his shirt and adding it to the pile, Nathaniel arranging pillows in a protective circle, Gabriel tucking soft blankets around the edges. "Scent," Sebastian explained when he saw my confusion at him removing his shirt. "Your omega needs alpha scent during heat. It helps. But only if you want it." I wanted it. God, I wanted it so badly. The smell of them, cedar and winter and safety, was the only thing that made the burning bearable. They took shifts. Gabriel stayed with me first, sitting close enough that I could feel his warmth but not touching unless I reached for him. And I did reach for him, my hand finding his, gripping tight as another wave hit. "Breathe," he coached me. "In through your nose, out through your mouth. I've got you. You're safe." When the shaking got bad, he pulled me against his chest, let me bury my face in his neck where his scent was strongest. "That's it," he murmured. "Take what you need." But when my hands started to wander, when the heat made me bold and desperate, he caught my wrists gently. "Not yet, sweetheart. I know it feels like you need this, but You'll regret it tomorrow, and we're not doing anything you'll regret. Sebastian took over in the early morning hours. He was clinical and gentle, checking my temperature, making sure I stayed hydrated, offering cool cloths for my forehead. The fever's high but not dangerous, he said, more to himself than to me. Heart rate elevated but steady. You're doing so well, Rowan. So well. He sat on the floor beside the bed, his back against the mattress, and told me stories. About the animals at the sanctuary. About his work as a vet. About anything and everything to keep me grounded, keep me present. When I begged him to make it stop, he climbed onto the bed and held me, careful to keep his touch comforting rather than stimulating. I can't make it stop, he said honestly, but I can be here while you go through it. You're not alone. Nathaniel's shift started in the afternoon. He was the most physical of the three, and I could see the strain on his face, his alpha instincts screaming at him to claim me, to give me what my body was demanding. But he didn't. He massaged my aching muscles, brought me food I could barely eat, changed the sheets when they got soaked with sweat, all practical, caring touches that helped without crossing any lines. You're the strongest person I've ever met, he said during one of the calmer moments. Do you know that? You're going through this without any assistance, and you're still holding on, still fighting. It hurts, I whimpered. I know, and if you want, I can help. We can help. But Rowan, he cupped my face, made me look at him. It has to be your choice, your clear, conscious choice. Not heat talking, not desperation, you. I understood what he was saying. They could help me through the heat physically, could give my body what it was demanding. But they wouldn't unless I asked for it without the heat's influence, which was impossible in the middle of it. So they suffered with me. I could smell their own arousal, their alpha response to my omega heat, could see the strain in their faces, the tension in their bodies. But they never wavered, never pushed, never took. They rotated through the shifts, making sure I was never alone, never without comfort. They brought me water, food, clean clothes. They maintained the nest, adding fresh shirts when the scent started to fade. They held me through the worst of it, their bodies a solid anchor when mine felt like it was coming apart. On the second day, when the heat peaked, I broke down completely, sobbing, shaking, begging them for relief they wouldn't give. Please, I cried into Gabriel's shoulder. Please, I know what you need, he said, his voice rough. And God, Rowan, I want to give it to you. We all do, but not like this. When we bond you, when we make love to you, it's going to be because you chose us, not because heat made the choice for you. I am choosing you, I insisted. Ask me again tomorrow, he said firmly. When the heat breaks, when your mind is clear, ask me then, and I'll give you everything. We all will. On the third day, the heat started to ease. The desperation faded, replaced by exhaustion and a bone-deep ache. I slept, finally, deeply, wrapped in all three of their scents. When I woke on the fourth morning, my mind was clear. The heat was gone, leaving behind only the memory of it and the knowledge of what they'd done for me. They'd stayed, they'd cared for me, they'd protected me from myself and from them. They'd shown me what real alpha behavior looked like, not taking what they wanted, but giving what I needed. That's when I knew this wasn't just biology. This was real. Sebastian, I said softly. He woke immediately, alert and concerned. Rowan? Are you okay? Do you need... I love you, I interrupted. All three of you. I love you, and I want this. I want everything. Sebastian's face transformed, joy breaking across his features like sunrise. He reached out, cupped my face gently. Are you sure? You're still recovering from heat. You might not be thinking clearly. I'm clear, I said firmly. Clearer than I've ever been. I want to be yours. I want you to be mine. I looked at the other two, who were awake now and watching with identical hope. I want forever. With all three of you. Gabriel moved first, pulling me into his arms. You have it, he said roughly. You have forever. You have everything. They courted me properly after that. Insisted on it, actually. We're doing this right, Nathaniel said. No rushing. You deserve to be courted, claimed, bonded the way our Omega should be. The first official date was with Gabriel. He picked me up on a Saturday morning, looking effortlessly elegant in dark slacks and a cashmere sweater. I thought we'd go to the art museum, he said. Unless that's not your thing? I've never been, I admitted. I always wanted to, but the admission was too expensive. His expression tightened for just a second, that flash of anger at all the things I'd been denied before it softened. Then, let's make it memorable. The museum was quiet on a Saturday morning, mostly empty, except for a few serious art enthusiasts. Gabriel didn't rush me through the exhibits. He let me linger in front of paintings I found beautiful, never acting bored even when I spent 20 minutes staring at a single piece. What do you see in it? He asked, standing beside me in front of a large abstract painting full of blues and grays. The storm, I said softly. Or maybe after the storm? That moment when everything is still gray and cold, but you can tell the worst has passed. There's quiet, peace, almost. He looked at the painting, then at me. Is that how you feel? After the storm? I thought about it. About my life before them, the loneliness, the poverty, the constant anxiety, about finding Atlas, about nearly dying, about everything that had come after. Getting there, I said, with your help. He took my hand then, the first time he'd initiated that kind of contact. His hand was warm, his grip gentle but secure. We'll help you get all the way there, however long it takes. After the museum, he took me to a small cafe tucked away on a quiet street. We talked for hours over coffee and pastries, and I found myself telling him things I'd never told anyone. About my grandmother raising me after my parents died. About being bullied in school for being a quiet Omega. About choosing to work with animals because they never judged, never demanded I be something I wasn't. And he told me about being a triplet, about always having built-in best friends, but also never quite being seen as an individual. About the pressure of running a company his parents had built. About the loneliness of success. Everyone wants something from me, he said quietly. A deal, a favor, access to our resources. But you didn't even want to take our help at first. Do you know how rare that is? I just didn't want to be a burden, I said. You could never be a burden, Rowan. You're a gift, one we don't deserve but are grateful for anyway. The second date was with Sebastian, and it was completely different. He showed up in jeans and a flannel shirt, grinning. Hope you don't mind getting dirty, he said. He took me to a farmer's market on the outskirts of the city. We wandered through stalls selling fresh produce, handmade soaps, local honey. Sebastian seemed to know half the vendors, stopping to chat and introduce me as my Omega with such pride it made my face heat. We bought ingredients for lunch, fresh vegetables, artisan bread, cheese from a local dairy. Then he drove us back to the estate and taught me to make his mother's signature dish, a vegetable stew that had been a sanctuary staple. She used to make this every Sunday, he said, showing me how to chop the vegetables. Said it was about nourishing the body and the soul. The animals could smell it cooking, and they'd all gather around the kitchen, waiting. Cooking with him was intimate in a way I hadn't expected. Our hands brushed as we worked. He'd stand behind me to show me a technique, his chest against my back, his breath warm on my neck. And through it all, he talked about his mother, his love for healing, his dreams for the sanctuary. I want to expand, he said as we sat down to eat the stew we'd made together. Add a rehabilitation program for Omegas who've been through trauma. Pair them with animals who are also recovering. I think the healing could go both ways. That's beautiful, I said, and needed. So many Omegas don't have support after trauma. Would you help me design it? He asked. You understand both sides, the animals and the Omega experience. Your input would be invaluable. The fact that he valued my opinion, wanted my expertise, made something warm bloom in my chest. I'd love to. The third date was with Nathaniel, and I was nervous. He was the most intense of the three, the most obviously protective. But when he picked me up, he surprised me. Ever fired a gun? He asked. No, I said, a little alarmed. Want to learn? It's practical. Good self-defense skill. But if you'd rather do something else... No, I interrupted. I want to learn. Teach me. He took me to a private shooting range, one clearly designed for serious training. He was patient, thorough, teaching me everything from basic safety to proper stance to breath control. You're a natural, he said after I managed to hit the target 3 times in a row. Good focus, steady hands despite the frostbite. After the range, he took me hiking on a trail that wound through the hills behind the estate. It was challenging, my lungs burning as we climbed, but Nathaniel matched his pace to mine, never making me feel slow or inadequate. At the top, we sat on a flat rock and looked out over the city spread below us. I used to come here after our parents died, he said. Needed to get away from everything, everyone, just be alone with the quiet. Do you still need that? I asked. Sometimes, he admitted. But lately, the quiet feels less necessary. You make the noise bearable, more than bearable welcome. He told me about his work in security, about protecting people who couldn't protect themselves, about the weight of responsibility, of knowing that mistakes could cost lives. That's why I was so frantic when Atlas went missing, he said. He's not just a pet, he's family. He's our responsibility, and I failed him. You didn't fail him, I said firmly. He got hurt, yes. But you found him, you saved him, and he's happy and healthy now. Because of you? Nathaniel said, turning to look at me. You're the one who saved him, Rowan. You're the one who gave everything to keep him alive. That kind of selflessness, that kind of strength, it's rare, it's precious. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I've spent my life protecting others, but with you, I want to be protected too. Want to let my guard down. Want to trust that you'll catch me if I fall. I will, I promised. I'll always catch you. The dates continued over the next months, sometimes all three of them together, sometimes one-on-one. They took turns showing me their worlds, but more importantly, they let me show them mine. I brought them to Mercy Paws to meet Rita and say goodbye to Copper properly. Nathaniel immediately started a donation fund to help the shelter upgrade their facilities. Gabriel sat on the floor with the three-legged cat and let her climb all over him. Sebastian spent an hour with their overworked vet, offering advice and resources. They met my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who'd been the closest thing to family I'd had in the city. She took one look at the three of them and pulled me aside. Those boys are smitten, she said in her thick accent. You be good to them, yes? They be good to you. I will, I promised. They already are. Every date, every interaction, every quiet moment built something between us. Something solid and real that had nothing to do with fate or biology and everything to do with choice, with compatibility, with genuine affection. I was falling in love with them, each of them, individually and collectively, and I could feel through the strengthening bond that they were falling just as hard. 6 months after that first dinner, they asked me to move in. Not demanded, asked. We want you in our home, Gabriel said. We want to wake up with you every morning, but only if you're ready. I was ready. More than ready. Moving was easy because I barely had anything worth taking. They'd already replaced my furniture, updated my wardrobe, made sure I had everything I needed. But I brought the important things, my grandmother's pictures, my collection of veterinary textbooks, the small succulent I'd somehow kept alive for 3 years. They gave me my own room, even though we all knew I'd never sleep there alone. It's your space, Sebastian explained. For when you need quiet, for your things, we want you to have that. They thought of everything. They made me feel safe and valued and home. 1 year after they'd found me in the snow, I asked them to bond me. We were in the sanctuary, in the garden Sebastian had planted specifically for quiet moments. Atlas was nearby, dozing in the sun. The brothers were all there, and I'd asked them to come because I had something to say. I want to be bonded, I said without preamble. Officially, permanently. I want to be your Omega, in every way. Gabriel's breath caught. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. I said, you've given me everything. A home, a family, a job I love, a life I never dreamed I could have. I want to give you me, all of me, forever. Sebastian pulled me into his arms. We don't need a bond to love you. You know that, right? We love you regardless. I know, I said, but I want it anyway. I want to feel you the way you feel me. I want the connection, the permanence. Nathaniel stepped closer, his hand gentle on my face. When? Now, I said. Today. Why wait? They'd apparently been prepared for this, had been ready for months, just waiting for me to be ready. They'd already arranged everything. The bonding ceremony happened in the sanctuary garden at sunset, with Atlas as our only witness besides the officiant. It was small and private and perfect. They took turns marking me 3 bites, 3 bonds, three permanent connections that snapped into place like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't known was incomplete. And I marked them back, claiming each of them as mine. The bonds were overwhelming at first. I could feel them all, three of them, their emotions, their love, their absolute devotion. It was like being wrapped in warmth and safety and belonging all at once. I can feel you, I breathed, pressing my hand to my chest where the bonds hummed with life. I can feel all three of you. And we feel you, Gabriel said, pulling me close. We feel your happiness, your love, your peace. Our Omega? Sebastian murmured against my hair. Ours, Nathaniel agreed. Atlas barked once, as if adding his own agreement. 2 years after the bonding, I woke up feeling different. Not sick, just off. My body felt strange. My scent was changing, and when I mentioned it to Sebastian over breakfast, he went very still. When was your last heat? He asked carefully. I thought about it. I don't know. They've been irregular since the bonding. The doctor said that was normal. Rowan, Sebastian said slowly, I think you might be pregnant. The test confirmed it an hour later. Pregnant. 6 weeks along, according to the ultrasound Sebastian insisted on doing immediately. 3 heartbeats, he said, his voice full of awe. Rowan, you're carrying triplets. 3 babies. 1 from each of my mates, the way pack bonding worked. 3 tiny lives growing inside me. Gabriel cried when I told him. Actually cried, tears streaming down his face as he held me. We're having babies, he kept saying. We're going to be fathers. Nathaniel couldn't stop touching my stomach, his hand gentle and reverent, even though there was nothing to feel yet. You're growing our family, he whispered. You're giving us everything. The first trimester was hard. Morning sickness hit me like a freight train, leaving me nauseous and exhausted. But they were there for every moment. Gabriel held my hair back when I got sick. Sebastian made special teas that helped settle my stomach. Nathaniel installed a small refrigerator in our bedroom stocked with crackers and ginger ale. Whatever you need, they kept saying. Just tell us what you need. At 10 weeks, we heard the heartbeats at the doctor's office. 3 distinct rhythms, strong and steady. I cried. They all cried. Even Atlas seemed to understand something important was happening, pressing his nose gently against my stomach. The second trimester was better. My energy came back, and with it, my appetite. I was constantly hungry, eating meals that would have fed 3 people and still wanting more. You're eating for 4, Sebastian reminded me when I apologized for the 3rd time for finishing an entire roast chicken by myself. You need the calories. Eat as much as you want. My body started changing in obvious ways. My stomach swelled, my clothes stopped fitting, my center of gravity shifted. Gabriel took me shopping, buying me an entire wardrobe of comfortable clothes that accommodated my growing bump. You're beautiful, he said when I complained about how huge I was getting. You're carrying our children. Nothing has ever been more beautiful. At 20 weeks, we found out we were having 2 boys and a girl. They argued playfully about names for weeks, each suggesting more ridiculous options than the last. We are not naming our daughter Storm, I said firmly when Nathaniel suggested it for the 4th time. But it's strong, he protested. It's a weather pattern, Gabriel countered. Rowan's right. We need real names. We finally settled on names that honored their parents and my grandmother. James, after their father. Elena, after their mother. Rose, after my grandmother. The 3rd trimester was the hardest. I was huge, uncomfortable, unable to sleep in any position. My back ached constantly. My feet swelled. I couldn't see my toes anymore. But they never made me feel like a burden. Gabriel would massage my feet every evening. Sebastian monitored my health obsessively, making sure I was getting enough rest. Nathaniel carried me when walking became too painful, not caring that I protested about being too heavy. You're perfect, they kept telling me. You're doing something incredible. Let us help. Atlas became my constant companion. He'd lay beside me, his head on my stomach, keeping watch. When the babies kicked, his tail would wag. When I couldn't get comfortable, he'd shift to prop me up. He knew before any of us, when labor was starting. I was at the sanctuary, doing light paperwork, when it happened. Just a twinge at first, easy to ignore. But Atlas started whining, pawing at my leg, refusing to settle. What is it, boy? I asked. Then the next contraction hit, stronger this time. Not a twinge, a squeeze. Oh, I breathed. Oh, we're doing this now. Sebastian was there in seconds. He'd been in the clinic. Contraction? I nodded. Just started. He pulled out his phone, already calling Gabriel and Nathaniel. It's time. Get home. Now. The labor was long. 16 hours of contractions that got progressively stronger, more intense, more overwhelming. But they were there for every minute. Gabriel held my hand, letting me squeeze hard enough to bruise. You're doing so well, he kept saying. So strong. So perfect. Sebastian coached me through the breathing, his medical knowledge keeping me calm even when I wanted to panic. You've got this. Your body knows what to do. Just breathe. Nathaniel stood guard at the door, keeping everyone out, making sure I had privacy and peace. But between contractions, he'd come to me, press his forehead to mine. I've got you. We all do. You're not alone. The birth was brutal and beautiful. James came first, screaming his lungs out, tiny fists waving. Gabriel cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. Elena came 20 minutes later, quieter than her brother, but just as perfect. Sebastian checked her over with expert hands, his own tears falling onto her tiny head. Rose came last, after another hour of pushing that left me exhausted and shaking. Nathaniel caught her, held her like she was made of glass, looked at her with such pure love it made my chest ache. They placed all 3 babies on my chest, and I looked down at them, these tiny, perfect humans we'd made together, and felt more complete than I ever had. We did it, I whispered. We're parents. You did it, Gabriel corrected. You brought them into the world. You're incredible. The first weeks were chaos. 3 newborns meant 3 times the feedings, 3 times the diaper changes, 3 times the crying. But they tag-teamed everything. Took shifts so I could sleep. Handled the exhaustion without complaint. You carried them for 9 months, Sebastian said when I tried to apologize for being tired. Let us do this. Let us take care of them so you can recover. And slowly, we found our rhythm. James, who looked like Gabriel. Elena, who had Sebastian's gentle nature. Rose, who had Nathaniel's intensity even as a newborn. 3 perfect pieces of our pack. The same snow that had nearly killed me 2 years ago was falling outside the window. But this time, I was warm. This time, I was safe. This time, I was home. Now, as I sit in the sanctuary garden with our 3 toddlers playing nearby and Atlas watching over them like the world's best nanny, I think about that night in the blizzard, about the choice I made to give my blanket to a dying dog. Gabriel appears behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, his hand resting on my stomach. I'm 6 months pregnant again, twins this time, we've learned. What are you thinking about? He murmurs against my ear. About how I nearly died saving a dog, I say, and how that dog saved me right back. You saved all of us, Sebastian says, joining us with snacks for the children. You showed us what real strength looks like, Nathaniel adds, settling beside us with our daughter in his arms. Atlas trots over, rests his massive head on my knee, and looks up at me with those same soulful eyes from that night in the snow. Good boy, I whisper, scratching his ears. The very best boy. The snow falls gently around us, soft and peaceful. Nothing like the blizzard that changed everything. But I'm not afraid of the cold anymore. Not when I'm surrounded by this much warmth, this much love. Not when I'm finally, completely, perfectly home. Thank you for joining Rowan Ashby's journey from a lonely shelter worker to a bonded Omega with 3 loving alphas and a growing family. If this story of sacrifice, rescue, and fated love touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more BL Omegaverse stories. Drop a comment telling me which moment hit you hardest. Until next time, remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is save someone who needs you. And sometimes, in saving them, you save yourself. The greatest love stories start with the smallest acts of kindness.